Welcome, Chase, to the Biohacker Babes.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, yeah. We've been wanting to get you on for a very long time, and I don't really know why it took so long, but maybe it was just the timing had to be right. And I don't know. Today feels like a good day. I don't know what you think.
I agree. Yeah, it has been a minute, but everything works out the way it's supposed to. So I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you. We realized right before we hit record, we haven't really done a fully dedicated episode to CBD. And we were talking before about how confusing the industry is. So for our listeners and for you, we're really excited to kind of get into the nuances and maybe give some people some structure so they can understand this better, because I really still have a lot of questions myself. But I just want to share with the audience. We met in the third wave coaching certification program. I'm not even exactly sure what that language is, but
Yep.
coaching program around psychedelics, which was mostly virtual, but we did get to spend some time together in Costa Rica for our live retreat, which is amazing. And as our audience already knows, you are the founder of HempLucid, which has been around for seven
Yep. Going
seven
on our
years.
seventh year.
Amazing. So we're excited to dive into your products and what you got going on in that world. But we'd love to hear how you got into this to begin with. What is your story and what was your transition into this work?
Yeah, definitely. So my initial work, I come from the EMS fire science world. So I always wanted to be a fireman my whole life. Went to school, graduated with my bachelor's, got into the industry, worked as a wildland firefighter for about 8 years, and then transitioned into structure fire, where I ran on an ambulance for about a year and a half. And that's kind of where my transition in this industry kind of started. Working in that field, I realized I was just kind of a spoke in the wheel, and I wasn't really facilitating like actual change in people's life. And that um that time period really gave me an opportunity to see the immense amount of suffering that people were going through at the hands of big pharma, and just the overprescription or overprescribing of prescription pills, and just the damage that had done to the community that I was working in. And so I was always like, okay, this isn't the way, this isn't my path. There's got to be something bigger out there. And I had some injuries from working in the field, and I was looking for natural ways to, help heal my body and my mind. And started to do some research, and, found cannabis. And because of the field I was working in, I couldn't use cannabis. So I found CBD, isolated CBD, which is just, and we'll get into that as far as the different types of CBD. But I was taking a CBD isolate product, and it started to heal my injuries, heal my back. And then that's when I decided, like, okay, for some reason, Utah kept calling me back. So I packed up all my stuff from Colorado, moved to Utah, and that's where I started the company.
Awesome. All part of the journey. I love that. You really found your calling.
Mm-hmm.
So I know before we hit record, we were talking about a couple different ways to start, but I feel like we need to start with like what is marijuana, what is cannabis, what is CBD? Just like maybe like a quick breakdown for people, because it was interesting that you said as well that people hear about CBD and they're like, oh, is that like I'm smoking an illegal drug? Like some people still think that. So maybe we can do a quick breakdown of that before we go any deeper.
Yeah, so
The
you have
101.
the cannabis sativa plant, and then you have like kind of two offshoots of the cannabis sativa plant. So a plant that is bred for high THC, which is going to be your marijuana family, and then the other offshoot would be hemp, which is bred for low THC content. Also, industrial hemp fits underneath that category. And so hemp, it's such a, I mean, just cannabis in general. I mean, it's such um, a very underutilized plant and what it offers to humanity. So on the hemp side, we could make these wonderful hemp products that contain CBD and all these other cannabinoids, but you also have industrial hemp, which you can grow for fiber, clothing, ropes, building materials, batteries, fuel, food. And so it's a very versatile plant, and that's kind of the breakdown of the two.
Wow. Yeah.
I suppose
Hemp
another
can do a
big
lot.
question is, why do we need these things? I mean, you started out talking about how there's immense suffering, and we could talk about big pharma and conventional medicine, but also just through like ancestral intake of hemp and CBD. I'm sure people are thinking like, why all of a sudden do our bodies need this? It seemed like maybe we didn't need them before, but ancestrally, was there more intake of these plants? And then did we go through a period of time where we didn't have them? And I suppose this is a good transition into the endocannabinoid system, which is where we can get a little more sciencey. Like, why do we need this stuff?
Yeah, so kind of break that down into two different sections. So number one, hemp, extremely versatile. If you look all throughout history, humanity has grown and lived side by side with cannabis and hemp for as long as history goes back. Sails on pirate ships were made of hemp. Our forefathers, the founding fathers of our country, they all grew hemp and they actually ingested hemp. The first draft of the Constitution was written on hemp paper. So there's this full lineage of humanity and hemp, cannabis kind of evolving side by side. And then you have the kind of the medical cannabinoid aspect where, we do, all mammals have the endocannabinoid system. So there's a system inside of our body that's really closely related to the just our nervous system. It's very intertwined. And this system is vast throughout the body. So it connects, the way that I like to think of it, it connects the mind of the body. It's kind of the internet of the body, the way our brain and organs communicate. We have two types of receptors in the cannabinoid system. So CB1 receptors, which is located in the brain, the gut, and the liver. And then CB2 receptors are located all throughout the rest of the organs in the body. And, it's really awesome. Our bodies produce exogenous cannabinoids. So we produce cannabinoids. That's kind of the most popular cannabinoid that we produce is called it's called the anandamide, which is like the bliss molecule. So if you've experienced like a runner's high, or, you have this euphoric feeling after you work out, that's your body producing anandamide, which is a cannabinoid. And it just so happens that phytocannabinoids from plants also interact with this system. And the really cool thing is it's like this number is always changing, but there's over 100 different cannabinoids in the cannabis plant, and each cannabinoid has a different effect on our body. So CBD, THC, CBN, CBG, THCV, THCA. I mean, there's a whole list. And
So many letters.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah, a ton. And they all have different effects and impacts on the body. And, we can also get into that as well.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So I guess I'm just curious, on a higher level, are we deficient in these cannabinoids, or maybe we have through modernization created an insufficiency just because of our diet and food supply changing, or is it an onslaught to our nervous system? So now we have a higher need for it.
Well,
Or maybe we don't need it at all. It's making things better for us.
yeah, I mean, it is interesting that, there's all this literature and history of cannabis and human beings dating back to, almost the beginning of man. So it's, as far as like an evolutionary standpoint, it's, I don't know. I don't think that has really been understood and researched that in depth. But definitely getting away from cannabinoids as the kind of the industrial age took over. They really, the powers that be, or whatever you want to call them, they really took away cannabis from us. And now it's starting to get back into our culture and the supply of supplements and food, and we're starting to see these incredible health benefits from taking these cannabinoids.
I love that.
What was the biggest driver for the powers that be that took this away? Was it a money thing? Was it a health reason? Money?
Yeah, both.
Money.
So
Okay.
it's really cool because they're just on the hemp side. Hemp and the fiber can literally replace almost everything we see in our reality when it comes to fabric, building materials, fuel. So it's this entire $1 trillion industry based off of hemp. And when they outlawed it, that's when you saw the rise of petroleum-based plastics, batteries, even pharmaceuticals. Pharmaceuticals are petroleum-based, and I think it was on purpose because being in this industry 7 years and seeing at this point, I would say thousands of people that we've worked with that have gotten off of a handful of pharmaceuticals just by incorporating CBD and, obviously switching up diet, lifestyle. But that's been the most rewarding part of what we've done, is getting to talk to all the people. Every week we get emails, phone calls. Hey, thank you so much. I'm off XYZ pharmaceutical. So I think it was pulled out of our just diet on purpose to push this other agenda that we now see that is really, I guess, starting to fail us. Because the solutions aren't, the solutions aren't there. And, big pharma is not healing people. It's just making people, just putting people on this really unfortunate cyclic pattern of no cures, just treating a small symptom.
Yeah. Creating more suffering, as you mentioned earlier, just like a hamster wheel that perpetuates. So fascinating. So definitely want to circle back to the mental health component, because I just think that's so huge. And you mentioned it's so intertwined with the nervous system, the endocannabinoid system. So it makes sense to me that there is a huge need for this. But for the consumer, it's really confusing to walk into a store and be like, I've heard about CBD. I think it can help me with my pain or my anxiety. It's very overwhelming to know what to buy. And at HempLucid, you have such a wide array of products. So I love to just kind of hone in and explain the difference between an isolate versus a broad spectrum versus a full spectrum, THC free versus trace amounts. And I know there's like a boundary which would then categorize it as THC free, but maybe there's not zero. I'll let you run with that.
Right. Yeah. It is a little bit confusing, and the industry has evolved a lot over the last 7 years. So there's kind of three, you could say, like foundational components to all the CBD products that are out there. So you have full spectrum, broad spectrum, and then THC free. And so full spectrum, you're getting the full extract of the plant. So you're getting all of the flavonoids, all of the terpenes, all of the cannabinoids, not just CBD, but, typically there's anywhere from 5 to 12 minor cannabinoids in a full spectrum hemp extract product. And then you have broad spectrum, which is a extract that has been refined to remove the THC. And so, when the industry first started, it was just CBD full spectrum, and then it was isolate. And then as this industry evolved, people are like, hey, we do want to have additional cannabinoids in there, but can you take the THC out because I work for the government, or, I have a job that drug tests. So the industry evolved and started making broad spectrum products, which is some terpenes, some other secondary cannabinoids with THC removed. And then kind of the third category would be just CBD isolate, which is almost kind of sounds bad, but it's kind of like a pharmaceutical in a way. Like it's isolated down to just the specific CBD molecule, no terpenes, no flavonoids, no other cannabinoids, just CBD by itself. So those are kind of the three foundational, I guess you could say, like product types within the industry. And then from there, that's where you get your tinctures, your topicals, your gel caps, your edibles are made from kind of those three foundational components of full spec, broad spec, or isolate.
So
many options.
Yeah. So a lot of your products, I've noticed there's like 1 to 2 milligrams of THC. Is that considered broad spectrum or full spectrum?
So that would be full spectrum.
Okay. So that amount is full. Okay. So
Yep.
Broad is maybe where you see on the bottle less than 0.3% THC.
Broad spectrum would be THC free. So you kind of have two
Totally,
THC free products. You have the
Okay.
isolate, which is just the molecule, and then broad spectrum, which is CBD plus some other secondary cannabinoids.
Okay. And do we need THC? I don't feel good with like a lot of THC. Is there a benefit to it? Or is it just the high component? What's going on there?
Yeah, so THC is, really good for pain.
Okay.
It also helps with appetite. But in like full spectrum hemp products, there's something called the entourage effect, where all the cannabinoids, all the flavonoids, all the terpenes, synergistically work together to produce this just a more of a, I guess you could say, like a healing effect. And something that's been interesting in this industry is we get a lot of people from the medical marijuana industry that end up transitioning to CBD products because they're like, hey, I'm using these high THC flower or, tincture extracts, and it's actually giving me anxiety. And so that is one component that people typically get, or typically some people get from THC, is it'll actually increase anxiety. So we've actually had a lot of people over the years start switching to CBD to actually get off of like high THC products because they like the feeling better. I mean, the feeling is more grounded, euphoric, it's not heady. And so that's been kind of interesting to see how that's evolved over the years.
Yeah. Quick story about Aubrey Marcus. I heard him speak at Meet Delic 2 years ago, I think. That was actually when I first met HempLucid at a booth there. I bought my first bottle. But something that Aubrey said really stuck with me. He said, people that get anxiety with CBD, whatever, it's not the CBD causing or the THC causing the anxiety. That person has anxiety deep within and it's just expressing.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? You agree?
Yeah, I would agree to a certain extent. But there is also some research and data out there that shows people high THC can trigger anxiety or other kind of mental, not mental illness, but like some other like mental effects like bipolar. Andrew Huberman has a really good podcast on cannabis, and he talks about how everybody shouldn't, there's a section of people out there that shouldn't use high THC products at all.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember hearing that. So And again, it makes sense if it's so intertwined with the nervous system. It sounds like that could be such a delicate balance where I don't know if the word is overstimulation, but we could be tipping the scales in the wrong direction for any individual.
Mhm.
So I guess again, just to come back to these three categories, I'm thinking like the full spectrum sounds like we're eating the full egg, the yolk and the white, and the isolate is like just eating egg white, I suppose. And the broad
Yeah.
spectrum is somewhere in between. So are the big differences just sensitivity to THC? Also, maybe if you are drug tested for your job, and then I guess at the end you can decide like what feeling do you really prefer, where you like to live.
Yep. Yep, exactly. I mean, the industry kind of catered to broad spectrum, or created broad spectrum because a huge portion of our culture still drug tests. Police, fire, military, sports athletes. At the time, I mean, a lot of these laws have kind of eased over the years.
Yeah.
But 3 to 5 years ago, there was pretty much a hard stance on no THC. So it's freed up a little bit, and obviously the best product is the full spectrum. Like if you can get a full spectrum product, or you had to choose between the three, that's definitely the one you want.
Because of the synergistic effects. I mean, we're getting nature at its best, I suppose.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah. And then beyond that, we know sourcing is so important. Like this industry has exploded, and better than anyone else. And there's potentially a lot of crap out there.
A ton.
Maybe some things doing more harm than good.
Yes.
So can you explain how HempLucid sources? What's the extraction? What do we need to know about the actual production?
Yeah. So, just like any new industry, there's going to be people that come into the industry and just are trying to make a quick buck. And, I feel like that phase of the industry has ended, because it all comes down to effectiveness of product. You have a product that is effective, and there was not a study, but a journalist ordered, it was like 50 CBD products online, like 3-4 years ago, tested all those products, and 80% of them didn't even have CBD in it, or was below the advertised CBD milligram. So there is a lot of shysters out there that are definitely trying to take advantage of the movement.
I mean, like the whole supplement industry, right? You hear that about all kinds of products off the shelf. They test it and there's nothing in there.
There's nothing there.
Oh gosh.
Definitely. So COAs are the biggest thing. That's something that we've done from day one, is test result. We have a QR code on all of our products. Scan the QR code. It takes you to a page where you enter the lot code, and it takes you right to that third-party test result, which will show all the cannabinoids, terpenes, heavy metals, pesticides. Pesticide is a big issue within this industry, because hemp is a bioremediator, so it sucks up all the pollution from our soil. And so we've always worked with one farm the entire time of our kind of the duration of our business, and every year we go out there and we walk the farm, meet with the growers. It's kind of a yearly trip that we do.
Where's the farm?
Colorado. So yeah, a lot of good cannabis comes out of Colorado. Yeah. But yeah, we've always been really particular in that, just because of the way what hemp does and what it sucks up out of the soil. So we've always worked with this farm, and they've always done organically grown CBD or hemp CBD. And I think it was 2019, 2020, where we decided to go organic certified, which there's a big difference in the industry where, some companies are saying it's grown organically, and that's great. But to be certified organic, there's more kind of regulations that you have to go through. And the biggest one there is if you're going to grow hemp on a USDA certified organic field, you had to have grown organic crops in that field for at least 5 years. So we know that, the field that it's grown on is certified, it's good soil, no pesticides or other heavy metals that can contaminate our products.
Thank you
Amazing.
for doing that. I know that
Mhm.
takes a lot. I mean, just the minimum of 5 years, a lot of companies probably are like, it's too much. So thank you for doing that. And it sounds like, I mean, quality obviously really matters, but I almost compare it to like coffee or like a fish oil, where it's like, you're probably better off just not taking it if you're not going to get the clean organic stuff. So thank you again
Yes.
for doing that. I'm looking at my notes here. I had written pesticides, ? Heavy metals ? You just answered both of those. So thank you for
Yeah.
that.
Huge concern.
Yeah. And actually, so my husband, he likes like a edible sometimes. So maybe once or twice a year, we'll go to one of the dispensaries in Vegas, which is like on every corner now. And
Yeah.
I go in just to like look through the little window at what they have. And I've noticed they have like jars of CBD gummies.
Mhm.
And so I'm assuming, pesticides, heavy metals, probably a big problem. What else are a lot of these companies putting in there? Like sugar, artificial flavoring, like what else is toxic and kind of an off the store shelf product?
Yeah, so those are the big ones. So heavy metals, pesticides, those are the big ones, and then also residual solvents. So in the extraction process, some people there's a lot of different ways to extract. So you're also getting some residual solvents of ethanol, hexane. So there's just some other things to be mindful of. And then you nailed it. A lot of companies are putting in natural flavoring. I mean, even seed oils,
Oh,
flavoring, coloring. So we don't do any of that. I mean, we have one product where we do have natural flavors, which I'm in the process of getting rid of that formulation. And then, it's really like the dyes and the artificial flavoring is really big on the edible side, but actually even in tinctures too, like flavored tinctures. You'll see a lot of that natural flavoring and coloring, but it's huge in edibles. I mean, there's a ton of edibles out there that even have food dye, food coloring in those as well. So for us, for our edibles, we actually use fruit juice concentrate to flavor and color our edibles. So I found a manufacturer that used to actually be a dessert manufacturer, and they brought like 20 years of their industry knowledge to this industry, and yeah, it's amazing what they've done. So they partnered with various farms all over the country, and that's how they do their flavoring and coloring is with juice concentrate.
So, yeah. And I will say, no more trips to the dispensary since we got a bunch of HempLucid about 9 months ago. So my husband, he's plowing through the box faster than I am. So thank you. He'll just take like maybe 2 or 3 if he wants more THC, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the gummies are delicious. So you have a whole line now with functional mushrooms infused as well. Can you talk about that? Like so many different applications, focus, stress, sleep. Can you talk about the synergistic nature potentially of the functional mushrooms with the CBD hemp?
Yeah, so we've, here we're big fans of functional mushrooms in general. We all use mushroom supplements, and just, we would always pair them up with, our CBD and mushrooms. And then I brought in 2 master herbalists. That's a great thing about living in Utah. Like 50% of the supplements in the United States come from Utah. The Christopher's Herb School of Medicine is here. So there's a lot of natural holistic herbalists, and I've worked with 2 over the last 5 years in first of all, they've helped educate our consumer base, but then also product formulation. And, we're like, hey, let's put together some formulations that include cannabinoids and functional mushrooms and some other secondary herbs and nootropics to create solution-oriented products. And I think that's the next kind of big wave we're going to see in the health and wellness, the supplement space, is the mushroom boom. It feels like it's already here. It's already happening.
I think we're in the boom.
Yeah. Yeah. It kind of feels like how CBD was about 7 years ago with functional mushrooms. It's really cool. There's a lot of data and research and science on these functional mushrooms. Unlike our industry, there's not a lot of research because it's still, a or a schedule drug. So there's not a lot of research being done. But I think the kind of future of the CBD industry is going to be transitioning CBD into an actual supporting ingredient with other supplements, and with functional mushrooms and cannabinoids together. It's such an effective combination that is, it's been more kind of potent. The products we've created with those two have been kind of more potent than what I was actually anticipating or expecting. So it's really fun to see, this new product line really start to take off.
I love it. I feel the potency. I love your hemp CBD, but the gummies with the functional mushrooms are just another level. And I love stacking for that synergistic effect. So these are amazing. And I haven't really seen anyone else do that just yet. So that's so interesting to hear that you think that the evolution is going in that direction of combining, because you're right. CBD went through it. I mean, just marijuana went through it in general, where people were just like smoking whatever. They didn't know what strain, what flower. And now with mushrooms, are finally starting to talk about strains. Like, there's just more education in general. So it's really cool to see them maybe start aligning in the same industry. That's exciting.
Yeah, it's a potent combination, and I think you're going to see a lot of companies get on board with combining the two. It's just, we're in a world where you got to have effective products, and when you combine those two, you definitely get an effective product. I mean, obviously sourcing matters, and clean products, and it all matters, but if you can pair those two up, you're doing something right.
I've bought so many CBD from so many CBD companies, and rarely do I buy it a second time because of what you said. I'm like, oh, it didn't feel much, and it's expensive. Because the consumer, you really like want to feel something.
Right.
Did we cover extraction? I don't think we did.
Just touched on it briefly. Yeah. So there's kind of the main extractions is supercritical CO2 extraction, and then a ethanol based extraction. So those are the two. Over the years, it's the technology in extraction has gotten very, very good. There's new forms of extraction like hot water bathing, steaming. It's definitely evolved, but still kind of the most popular and pretty much what most people are doing is supercritical CO2.
Okay. Nice. Sounds superhuman.
So is this really for everyone? I mean, like, what how else can we break this down for people? Like, I personally have definitely seen a major boost in my deep sleep when I use CBD. But what else? I know you mentioned pain, mental health, anxiety, depression. What else should people do?
So I kind of call it like the big four, the kind of the major four things that people kind of gravitate towards CBD for: sleep, anxiety, depression, and then pain. And then I could also throw in another one there, like mental health / addiction. It kind of, I mean, your kind of question was, is it for everybody, or is it not for everybody? And at this point in our reality, I think every human being is struggling with one of those 4 or 5 things. Some interesting things that have happened over the year, detoxing, which has been kind of interesting to see with a couple people, people who have had really bad, like heavy metal exposure, or farmers with pesticides, or people in the welding industry. this is really strange, but I've had a couple people where sores have opened up on their body and all of these like toxins are being pushed out just by taking, a CBD tincture twice a day. But those are like very heavy toxic people. So that's just over the years, that was something interesting where I'm like, I don't know, man, this one's kind of new for me. Just kind of ride this one out. And yeah, it's in my opinion, it is such an important molecule, and it's hyped up in our culture and our industry, but like it is so important. And I think kind of the foundational thing that it really hits on is inflammation. And inflammation is kind of the root of all evil. It's like sickness, disease. It's kind of really where it all stems from. So if we're taking a product consistently that is helping eliminate inflammation, then I think that's a good path for people to be on.
Yeah.
Who was it
Everyone.
for? Anyone with inflammation? Well, everyone.
Yeah.
Everyone on planet Earth.
That checks out. Yeah.
Yeah.
I kind of want to take a turn like into the dark side of cannabis. Like people are becoming more educated and the products in the industry are evolving so much, but there's still, again, so much crap out there. And I think a lot of people are using THC specifically, not for these health benefits, but more as like an escapism.
Correct.
Can you explain that? To me, it's like a great divide here. It's like, are you doing it to support your inflammation, mental health, anxiety, nervous system, or are you doing it because it's popular and cool and it gets you high and it distracts you from potential challenges and opportunities in your life?
Definitely. So something that's been kind of increasing over the years from us is people coming to us with cannabis addiction, THC addiction, because I think it has been like cannabis is a master plant and it's very powerful. And I think our culture hasn't done a very good job of like bringing a respectable use for it. Instead, it's just smoking is good for everything and it'll help with your pain and XYZ. But with the, I guess you could say, lack of respect or ceremonial use around it, to me, it feels like our culture has abused it. And also me speaking personally, I have definitely abused it. I have used it as a tool to escape and not look at, it kind of ignore my problems or push my problems to the side. And I think that's becoming more and more kind of relevant in our society, where things have gotten really tough in our culture and our country, and there's a lot of chaos of the world and war and famine, and it's hard to be a human right now. And so cannabis is such an easy tool to use to escape, and with that leads to abuse and addiction. So yeah, you are right that there's definitely a misuse of it in a large portion of our culture.
Yeah. But now hearing you say that, I'm like, oh, well, maybe people deserve that escapism because it is, as you said, hard to be a human. Like maybe we do deserve like a little bit of buffer just to keep our nervous systems quiet and a little more in balance. But I guess if the end of the spectrum is addiction, like at what point do we reassess and check in and make sure that we can be in better relationship with it? I guess, anytime something becomes available, it is at risk of being abused. So I suppose it's up to the individual to decide on that relationship, but interesting that you're seeing a lot of addiction there.
Yeah, I think it's just bringing mindful, purposeful, intentional use to it instead of, hey, I just wake up and I just get high and this is what I do, or I smoke before work or after I eat, or it just kind of comes into like a routine, which it's a slippery slope. Like, yes, the world's crazy. It's nice to escape every once in a while, but a perpetual cyclical use every day with no intention can definitely slide into that addiction area.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of people are doing the exact same thing with alcohol, and that's and legal everywhere for a very long time. So I think it always comes back to the personal story. What are you really using it for?
Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Totally
And I
agree.
And I guess the quality, because alcohol is highly toxic, especially neurotoxic, but you can get
Yeah.
THC peach gummies. I'm like, what is that?
Yeah. But then the whole world of smoking, like, I don't think there's any benefit of smoking something, correct? I mean, we're seeing crazy cases of, I mean, lung cancer, other lung things, esophageal cancer. Even if you do want it for the health benefit, am I correct? Like, you don't need to smoke it. There's all these other tinctures, gummies, things like that. I'm talking about like your products, not like THC gummies from the dispensary.
Right. Yeah. So there, multiple ways of ingesting tinctures, topical inhalation. Inhalation is the fastest effect. And as far as I know, I don't know if there has been any cases reported of like heavy cannabis smokers having like cancer or any adverse effects to their lungs or kind of throat.
Okay. Maybe specifically vaping.
Yeah.
Maybe more vaping. And this is top of mind for me because I'm watching the docuseries on Netflix, Juul, Juul, I think was the company that started vaping. Have you seen this docuseries?
I haven't. I'm familiar with the company though.
Oh my gosh, it's crazy to hear the backstory of like, they really had this amazing mission. They were like, we're trying to get people to stop smoking cigarettes, but then it turned into this cash cow and teenagers got on board with the vaping and now they're having all these weird lung conditions. But
I see people everywhere, like people vaping in grocery stores and coffee shops, like shopping for clothing. I'm like, why do we need this all day long?
Yeah, it's turned into this weird thing within our culture where it's almost, I see some people on social media, it's kind of make fun of these people. It's like a pacifier. And
it's like holding a cigarette. It's just
and a lot of these vape products, there's definitely been a big crackdown, I think by the government over the last year or two. But a lot of the stuff was coming from China. They were finding a lot of weird chemicals in the actual vape juice, and that's led to all these issues and health problems that we're seeing in the youth and just people in general. I mean, you're vaping carcinogenic chemicals because
right,
it's like, who knows what's in the vape juice, but then it's also the cotton, the heavy metals that are heating up. Like, it's just, vaping is horrible.
There's the headline. Yeah.
I mean, I'm only on episode 2, but I'm already pretty much scared away from ever vaping. So yeah. So back to intentional use. And I think this fits into the larger picture of just plants and maybe mushrooms specifically, which is how our lives and paths intertwined. But there is such an opportunity to use these things intentionally. And if we do, we can really like drop into a fuller experience of life. And I know you've had many experiences, micro, macro, and really working through your own psyche, and you've brought that to HempLucid as well. I believe your whole team is sort of on board with this mission of being integrated and having this ecosystem that is involved in growth. Can you talk about how you've brought that into HempLucid?
Yeah, so just through my own healing, and then being an entrepreneur and creating a business, working for corporate America and just seeing how everybody has a corporate America story, and how they don't really care about your mental health, honestly. And so, part of being a business owner and not having investors or shareholders or people over my shoulder saying what I can and can't do, I wanted to provide or create an environment and a culture that was centered around mental health. And I got something that was really cool is I got involved with a documentary called Odom Reborn. It was with Lamar Odom, and we did a series of ketamine-assisted psychotherapy, as well as high-dose CBD and an ibogaine treatment in Mexico. And it was a very crazy year of my life following Lamar around and filming all over the country and in Mexico. But at the end of the day, it was great. You know, he kicked his habits, had just profound experiences. He never, up until his first ketamine treatment, never had a psychedelic experience. You know, always scared of psychedelics, and just over the years, the propaganda fear machine really infected a lot of people's minds. And so his first experience was incredible. I mean, we have it in the documentary, but he's like, you know, I talked to God, and it was very profound for him. So that was my first introduction into ketamine and watching his evolution and his healing. Then I started getting ketamine treatments, and it was very profound, and my healing and journey continued. And at the time I was like, wait, ketamine's legal? This is crazy. There's clinics all over the country. So I was just started Googling ketamine clinics and found some clinics here in Utah. And at that time I had 2 employees who were going through just horrific personal issues, divorces, and, you know, were very suicidal. And one night I scooped one of them up real late, took him to the clinic. He got a treatment, and he came out of the treatment and he's like, I can't even believe I wanted to end my life. Like, life is beautiful and love and light. And it was very profound for him. And then as time started going on, it's like, hey man, there's really something here. Like, we could really pioneer you know, a program or a protocol here to help businesses integrate psychedelic assisted therapy into their culture and their employees. So just kind of that, because we're going into a psychedelic future. Like, there's the cat's out of the bag. These medicines are healing. People are healing from severe trauma that big pharma has not been able to, you know, truly help people heal. So with the understanding of it's going to be a psychedelic future, let's start trying to integrate psychedelic medicine into business and mental health. And that led to me meeting Dr. Reed. At the time was, it's funny, they've gone through 3 evolutions. So at the time they were Cedar Psychiatry, then they got purchased by Novamind, and then Novamind got purchased by Numinous. And currently, yeah, we created Dr. Reed and I and our companies created this corporate mental health program and protocol that we've just kind of refined over the years. And it's now a program they offer to businesses all over the country. And we still continue to offer our employees quarterly ketamine treatments, sometimes more if needed. But yeah, it's something we're really proud of. It's been really revolutionary. It's got a lot of attention. Done interviews with people from Bloomberg, the Wall Street Journal, Forbes. You know, if you just Google HempLucid and ketamine, just a whole bunch of different articles pop up. So it's been something we've been really proud of, and it's really been revolutionary, and we're excited about it.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Congratulations. So
Yeah.
cool.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really hope other companies catch on and start doing that. I think it could change the world.
Yeah, they are. And, you know, now that it's not just strictly out of pocket, because at the time, no insurance companies were covering it and it was expensive. It's like $400 a treatment, but, you know, the company was paying for it. And it's been great now because insurance companies are now covering these treatments. And I've talked to a couple businesses and business owners who are, you know, implementing this into their business as well. So it's doing what we intended it to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually did ketamine through Mind Bloom, which, insurance didn't cover that. I'm fortunate enough that I could pay cash for it and experience it. But I'm actually curious, is all of this ketamine assisted therapy being done in office? Is this like IV?
Yep. So it's being done in Numinous's clinic. So it's all done.
There's someone there.
Yep. So they have a really cool program. I mean, I'm pretty sure they're the biggest ketamine assisted psychotherapy company in the world. Dr. Reed is their
Wow.
chief medical officer, and the research that they're doing is unbelievable. I mean, they've done a lot of research with ketamine, trauma, eating disorders, but they're also doing research on psilocybin and LSD. But yeah, everything is done in clinic with a psychiatrist and then one other clinician, and they sit with you throughout the duration of your treatment. And you go in with your intention, and as you're in the medicine, they're talking to you and like really working through some of your like deep rooted trauma.
It's powerful. Gosh, I mean, the eating disorder topic alone, like there's so much potential there. And I think back to when I was in high school and I had an eating disorder, the doctor was to my parents was like, here, put her on this antidepressant. Like, that's not gonna, it's not gonna really get to the root of what's happening here. My parents threw it in the trash can, never did it, but there wasn't, no one was talking about this back 20 plus years ago. So
yeah,
yeah,
I
really
think they
exciting.
actually just published their couple months ago published their research on ketamine and eating disorders. So it's out there. I'm pretty sure it's on Numinus's website. So if you're interested in digging into that, I know they've been really heavy on the research side with eating disorders and ketamine.
Awesome. It's powerful.
I mean, such a big opportunity, especially for children that are really suffering. I mean, mental health is no longer an adult condition. It is happening younger and younger. But then we have this explosion of psychedelics, maybe not the best option for children, but to integrate it into our culture and have parents be educated around it, or maybe even just it like adjacently for the parents to do it and bring that into like the field, maybe potentially is really helpful. So so many cool things happening just by being in this space. But
it's
integration, I would love for you to talk about integration, because that was, I mean, that's the big word in the space, right? And that was a huge part of our education at Third Wave, learning how to integrate, because we could take these medicines, we could take CBD, we could take THC, mushrooms, we could take a supplement and then just move on with our lives.
Right.
We have to show up and engage with these substances. So I'm just going to not ask you a question. I'd love for you to share your thoughts on integration.
Yeah, integration. I think integration is the next evolution and frontier of this industry and this movement. Because like you were saying, people are piling in, having these experiences, but nobody's really integrating. And I'm starting to see a lot of handful of programs, starting to pop up when it comes to integration, which is exciting and great because, I've also been part of that, like not integrating, and that's got me in some issues in the past. But yeah, integration, extremely important. And that's something that we learned the hard way through this kind of trial and error with Dr. Reed and ketamine for our employees. Is I didn't have a proper integration support system set up. So a lot of the employees, they have their therapist or coaches that they were working with, but then there were still gaps that were just needed to be shored up. And so Dr. Reed and one of his other partners up there, Hannah, we ended up setting up a integration call. So twice a month for people who have had a treatment, they have an integration call with those two. Most of the time it's like a group call. But for people that don't want to kind of share really personal experiences with the group, and that's another thing that's been tricky to navigate, is like we're all working together, but we're having these profound experiences and personal issues and trauma is coming up. And so I've told people that if it's too personal, you don't want to share in a group, definitely don't. And Dr. Reed and Hannah then meet with people outside of the group setting, and that's an ongoing integration every single month.
Awesome. Yeah. We have an integration call at mycology, and I would say like not as many people show up as I always expect. I think it's that like we are having very individual experiences, and that's hard to speak about in a group setting. But I hope that will change. I think it will change.
I think it will. I think it's just part of the evolution of building community and being vulnerable. I mean, it's
Mhm.
so hard to be vulnerable with people.
Yeah.
It's very challenging. So I think as this industry continues to evolve, more people will be vulnerable and share their experiences, because you learn so much in integration. I mean, all my ayahuasca experiences, like some of the best clarity and healing moments I've had have been in integration and not necessarily in ceremony. And it comes from other people's stories, perspectives, things start to click. So it's a very important component to this industry.
Mm.
Yeah.
Just an observation, because we were in Costa Rica and did a ceremony, and you happened to be in my vision line at 12 o'clock. So I happened to really see your experience, and you would sit up from time to time and write like a lot.
Uh-huh.
I feel like in observation, you're a writer. Is that a big part of your integration, being able to go back and kind of dissect the downloads that came up? And I guess what happens if you don't write down
Yeah,
these
so that's something
insights?
I've kind of cultivated and learned over the years, after my experiences. Um, I've had so many experiences where I'm like, oh, that was so profound. And then a week later, I'm like, oh man, what was that
What
really
was that?
profound thing that I had?
Yeah.
So I started journaling, and it's just been a practice that I've just really cultivated over the years. When you're in Peru and you're in the jungle and you're isolated from everybody, and you're in your tambo by yourself, there's really anything else to do besides write or draw.
Mm.
So I started really, like, sometimes even after ceremony, I would either do like prompts in my journal or an actual voice memo.
Ooh, I
And
like
it's
that.
always so helpful. I read back on some of my journals, 3 years ago, of some of my experiences, and it's like, oh yeah, like, don't forget this thing happened. And just with the chaos of our lives and how busy we are, some of those things just kind of slip out of our awareness and our consciousness. But being able to have stuff written down and go back and revisit has been extremely helpful for me. And I think a lot of people who, do integrate or do work in this space, that's kind of the one thing everyone talks about is journaling, writing, get it out of your mind, get it on paper.
I've
Yeah.
microdosed with a journal and microdosed without. And when I haven't, I'm like, no clue. Don't
Yep.
have any memory of
Mm.
it. No real downloads. I'm like, it might as well have not happened, honestly.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's interesting what you said too about the voice memo on top of journaling. Actually, when I went to Costa Rica with Ta and Cole. I don't know if you know Ta and Cole in this
Yeah.
space. They've definitely focused on integration. I mean, it was 8 days there. We did one Wachuma ceremony, 3 days prepping, and then 4 days of integration after. But they said if you're open to it, to do a voice memo during the ceremony, because they said when you listen to it later, you'll actually be able to pick up not just the words, but how you said it differently in
Yep.
the ceremony. I didn't end up
Yes.
doing that because there were a lot of people around. I was like, I'll just write because I didn't want to distract other
Mm,
people. But if you're by yourself, I could totally see that being a really cool tool.
yeah.
Yeah. The voice memos
Yeah.
are awesome because it also, like you were saying, like the tone of your voice and how you sound and the
Mm.
frequency, the fluctuations in that and the emotion. Like when you go back and listen to it, it hits a little bit harder than just kind of reading something you wrote down. So you're really capturing like the real raw essence of your download when you're in that moment.
It's like
Yeah.
sending a voice memo versus a text. How many times do we misunderstand a text?
Every day.
Get a
Right. Yeah.
every time I read one.
Yeah. Why did they put a period at the end of that sentence? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're mad
Should have
at
been
you.
an exclamation point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They actually also, in our group, there were a lot of podcasters, and they said the other thing you can do is during the ceremony, you can listen to yourself talking on the podcast to actually start to tune into when you are authentically podcasting. They said you'll really, again, tone of voice, you'll be able to hear when you're talking like this because you're nervous on a podcast versus really down and chill and authentic. I don't know. It's just another thing. I didn't get to do that either, but
I'm afraid to talk
next
anymore.
time. Next
Just made me super conscious.
on your next ceremony. Something to think about. Anyways.
Oh.
All right.
Anything else you want to share about ceremony and sort of, I mean, we're just in such a transition here and so many people are still, this is still new. What do you want to share?
Yeah.
What are we missing?
Yeah, I would say just generally, you know, it's I think it's one of the most special times to be alive at the moment. I think there is this huge movement and this awakening that is happening across humanity. And I think all the turmoil we see is human beings becoming aware and conscious of this reality that has been built for us, that has been built on a foundation of lies, and the foundation or the pillars of reality are really starting to crumble. You know, I think the last 4 years have really like shook people awake, and I think COVID was, you know, a big catalyst in the awakening. And it's wild to see, you know, our government is a lie, our media is a lie, our healthcare system is a lie. Just these main pillars that have been installed in our minds are failing. And I think that's also why we see like this increase in mental health issues, and also the rise of these medicines that help with our minds and kind of reshape our reality. And so I think it's such a special time to be alive because, you know, people like us and your listeners, you know, we are awakening. And I think it's one of the greatest, I think one of the greatest things that you can achieve as a human currently on this planet, like to know that we are waking up and that we are eliminating the propaganda and the culture programming to awaken and become our authentic self. I think just like I tell people, I'm like, you know, just the fact that I was able to wake up in this reality, I could die tomorrow and be completely happy and okay because I made it out. And, you know, you guys and your listeners and, you know, a large portion of humanity is starting to escape. And I think more than ever, it's important to, you know, cultivate community, to heal our own traumas personally, you know, utilizing cannabis, CBD, plant medicine, intentionally to heal and to, you know, expand. I think it's so important. And it's like food is the number one thing. Like you got to be eating whole foods, no process, no junk. That was really the start of my healing. Is my diet completely flipped, and then my body and mind really started to come online, and then I've just kind of added in these other medicines and practices to, you know, get to where I am today. So reality seems really hard right now, but I think if we just keep cultivating, you know, our own awareness and healing, then in your community, then, you know, we're going to be okay. But definitely get your mind right, get your body right, get your supplements, your food, because I think things are going to get a little bit more challenging and tricky I think Terrence McKenna says it best, like humanity's in a birth canal right now. And in the birth canal, a lot of things can happen. There's blood, there's violence, there's death. But on the other side of that, humanity's going to birth into something new. And that's what I'm really excited for. But in the meantime, it's like we all kind of got to hunker down and get healthy.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. That's a great
Wow.
message.
Amazing.
Well, thank you for sharing all of your thoughts and wisdom. I think that's a great message to close on. But Chase, if you can leave our audience maybe with just one thing they could start doing today to optimize health, wellness, humanity, what would be number one?
One thing. Oh man, could I do two?
Sure.
I
You
think
can.
food for sure. Like I think our food is so bad in this country, and how it affects our minds and our bodies is like, if you can't get your food right, then all the supplements and CBD, like it may help a little bit, but the foundational thing of a healthy, optimized person is your food. And then the second thing I would say, less phone time, less social media. It's kind of tragic what's happening. I mean, with these younger generations, like we grew up without the internet. And so I feel like we kind of have a duty to help educate and be an example for these generations coming up. And it's just, it's hard because these people, they're so glued to their phone that there's this lack of understanding of how to communicate with a human being in real time. So I think less phone time and good nutrition, good food is kind of what I'll leave you guys and your listeners with.
That was worth
Right.
it to have two. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good
Couldn't
advice.
agree more. Yeah.
Yeah. Chase, tell our audience where they can find more about HempLucid. What should they look for? Any messages to the consumer?
Yeah, so our
Biohacker.
website, hemplucid.com. If you guys have any questions, shoot us an email. I have a great customer service staff. We've held a 90 NPS score for the last few years. So we've really dialed in our customer service. If you call us, you're actually going to talk to a human being. Our customer service employees, representatives, they are holistically certified in cannabis. So if you do have questions, give us a call. They can really educate and talk you through which products to use, what strengths to use, what form factor to use, or also shoot us an email. And then we're HempLucid on all social media platforms, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube. And yeah.
Awesome.
Great.
I trust that our audience feels much more CBD informed after today's episode, but that's awesome to know that your customer service is dialed in. And also your website has a little university tab with some great videos if you want to just click into a few different topics. I always find that really helpful and useful. So
Yep. Yeah, we do have the university tab. It's going to be updated here with some new content, new videos, new people. So yeah, stay tuned for that.
cool.
Great.
Thank you for all the wonderful things you're doing in the world. Chase, is so awesome to have you here today.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate you girls, and I love what you're doing. And it's you're pivotal in the health and wellness of other people. So thank you.
We're all
Thank you
doing
for
our
that.
part. All doing
We
our
are.
part. Yeah. All right. Thanks, Chase. And
All right,
thanks to
thank you.
everyone for tuning in. We'll see you next time.